Kia ora, iti whānau. So, welcome. This is me, the Hawhekazi, aka Ngāti Hawhekazi. Imhiana kia koutou katoa i tēnei pōho, ko tēnei te wā tuatahi. Kua whakaora me ki i taku mata rorohiko, marunga i taku whārangi, TikTok. Nō reira, e mihi ana kia koutou katoa. Malo e lava my folks. It's me, Ngāti Hawhekazi, aka Hawhekasi. Yep. So, I guess I just want to share with you, right, my attempt to read a book that I've really struggled with because of recent, mental health has been a really big issue, and I'm a full-time doctoral thesis student, I should say, but obviously I've got all my research reading mahi to do, and I have to say, being a student, especially a thesis student, you're responsible for collecting, gathering, reading, analysing, critiquing your literature. It's really depressing, it's really hard. I've been drinking quite a bit of coffee, and mentally, physically, spiritually, psychologically, I don't think I've been doing my best. It's been really topsy-turvy hard just to find the motivation to, stay alert, stay vigilant, stay committed. And being honest here, being a doctoral student, being a master's student, being a thesis, responsible for writing your own thesis is very hard. It's like being a parent or a mother. And if there's one thing I've learned, it's that we have to find ways to be creative, but also actually find ways to stay in love with our research, because it's not lovely, it's not a loving environment, in all honesty. A lot of the time you come up against more assessors, more critics. There's a lot more reflection involved on your part, and in a climate like what we're in now, with our government and what's going on with the councils and universities, this is really huge ethnic warping, internationals, domestic students, and a lot of ethnic minorities, Wahine, solo mothers, grandmothers who are doing this journey by themselves. Man, big props to you. I got nothing but respect for you, because if it was easy, there would be more of us actually running the institutions, the universities. And so we do have some people on the front line, we do have some people in the office, but it's, it's still quite a huge thing to be in the system, and you're still up against, a mainstream kind of white culture where in white spaces we tend to be the minority. And so, visually, abstract wise, research is really, I have to say, it's quite depressing. And being a thesis, being a graduate thesis writer, I've had to find ways to kind of blog. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to read a book about a very well-known person by the name of Sir John Logan Campbell. Now, this book that I have, it was actually written by R.C.J. Stone. He's now retired. He's a very well-known Kiwi historian, and for many years he had published, wrote quite a bit of written, like, publications on Logan Campbell, and so he's a historian as well. Does a PhD in history. Was at Auckland University teaching, researching for many years, and so looking back, I wish I did major in history, but I've noticed that this, topic of history is still very much so the minority. It's not very popular in the universities, which is quite sad. And I hope that they find a pathway to actually teach, oral history or Indigenous history. That would be really good, especially for us here in New Zealand, Aotearoa, the Pacific Islands too, really interesting, our tribal history, but some of the things that hadn't been recorded by, white settler anthropologists or historians, if you like, um, needs to be taught and actually published. So I'd like to mihi to those people out there in the field who are actively trying to find ways to carve spaces so that our histories can be accessible, heard, spoken, taught, because I think that there's still quite a bit of shame around teaching, tribal histories for Maori and other Polynesian Indigenous people, generally speaking. So what I want to do now, whānau, is I'm going to read this book by C.J. Stone, because I have struggled to read this book, and I just find it really, yeah, look, I'll show you. So this man here, whānau, C.J. Stone, was given the nickname the Father of Auckland. So he was a trader, actually came from an upwardly middle class family from Scotland, the Highlands, and he was one of the first white settlers to actually trade with mana whenua Maori tribes here in Auckland, Tamaki Makaurau. I will add, just on the contrary, is that one of the main reasons why I went out of my way to collect literature about people like Campbell was because there's an ancestral connection there. There's a tupuna link there, and obviously I'm very proud of my obviously I'm a Mokopuna of iwi Maori here in Aotearoa in Tonga, but I have a Tangata Tiriti link. That being said, so my Western European ancestry, um, I can trace it to Scotland, to the Highlands, and Edinburgh as well. And so you see people like William Brown, who was actually a karaua to my grandmother, who was a direct descendant of Brown, and my great grandfather, well, I should say whānau karaua, but raised my dad. Quite logically was a grand uncle to my dad. He was a direct descendant, a Mokopuna of Logan Campbell, and so it's quite interesting learning about our European, our non-Maori, non-Indigenous European whakapapa, because I'm now in a space where I can reclaim my tangata tiriti and my tangata tiriti identity, if you like, and it makes me proud because now I feel like a complete person, and I should at this particular stage, because I'm not just a mokopuna, I'm also a wahine, and I'm a kairangaha, I'm a researcher, and so hopefully it gives you just a bit of cultural context on why I'm doing this research, but actually where I'm positioned as a woman of Maori, you know, moana, tangata moana, heritage, but actually a woman also with tangata tiriti, ancestry as well. And so you see, I can claim that I'm tangata tiriti as I am tangata whenua, and that makes me really proud. But it actually gives me a lot more clarity, so I know what I'm really doing, because I'm constantly reminded that my um, family tree, genealogy, family tree history is very rich. Okay, and the branches of my family tree history are very colourful, and the roots still stay the same. So I'm just gonna read whānau, just a section so that you understand, um, just to give you some background. Okay, so I'm gonna find a really good part. Okay. There's actually an ancestral connection, but there's a correlation between the two main characters in this book, because Campbell was in a merchant business partnership with Brown, William Brown, who was potentially one of the best traders in Auckland at the time when European and Maori people were living together, but Maori tribes were very much so still residing in their villages and on the marae, and so it's quite it's funny. I can laugh about it because I'm just coming into this circle of being able to reclaim my tangata tiriti um, ancestry or whakapapa, but it's really interesting as well. And just to illustrate my point, the main characters in the book, um, that they were merchant sailors. They were very business minded, and but some of the things that went down between our ancestors and the British Crown actually directly involved them. And so you see, back in those days, you had to choose a side. I'm very proud, to say the least, that my tangata tiriti, my European ancestors were able to influence and actually shape the direction of which our people, intermingled, intermarried, and were actually able to unite and fight on the forefront for things that concerned their grandchildren, but actually, things that will impact us for future years to come. Um, and a big part of actually being tangata tiriti is actually supporting Te Reo Māori, tikanga Māori, the signing of the Treaty of Waitangi, actually upholding our rights and our duties, not only as Kiwis or New Zealanders, but also as an ally, or a collective of people who support the aspirations, rights, and expression of freedom to protect and uphold uh, Maori culture, but also the Treaty of Waitangi, which is this country's founding document. And so I'm very proud to know that my European ancestors, in their own unique way, um, supported, the culture that I was born into, but also the culture that I was raised with. And I'm not saying that because I was born and raised here in New Zealand. I'm saying that because, mana motuhake, our independence, our all the years that, our ancestors, people had to frontline so that we had language and culture. Te reo me ngā tikanga Māori, tino rangatiratanga, everything that we have access and everything that we do now as far as being Māori is concerned is really a reflection of their sacrifice. So anyway, I'm going to read um, this part here. Brown and Campbell B&C was the first merchant firm to begin business in the new capital of Auckland, operating originally from a small tent on the shoreline. Brown and Campbell had the advantage of a head start, but business first in the field did not necessarily do well. A surprising number of Auckland's early merchants founded. Brown and Campbell survived only because of the skill of the partners. One includes the junior Auckland here. For though naive at first about business matters, he did not remain so for long. But better than that, competitors, the partners seemed to know just when to move forward, when to hold back. Carefully nursed in the difficult years, 1841, 1845, their firm was able, in consequence, to expand and prosper during the period of growth, through which Auckland passed in the later part of the decade. The real explanation for the extraordinary success of Brown and Campbell is yet to be found, nevertheless not in Auckland, but in faraway Scotland. In 1845, Brown persuaded a wealthy St Andrews businessperson to join the two Auckland merchants in a secret four-way partnership. Brown and Campbell went in. Gibson and Mitchell, Robert Mitchell being a young junior partner of his own, whom Gibson had sent to the colony 3 years before. For the next 10 years, Gibson's substantial financial resources were placed at the disposal of this new concern, which Campbell jokingly dubbed the Quadruple Alliance. In later life, Campbell always acknowledged that it was the command of capital provided by Gibson which enabled such great ends to be accomplished. The saying that money makes money was the true secret of this great success. In May 1855, the Quadruple Alliance ended its 10-year term. During the weeks before, the three partners in Auckland had carried out evaluation of its joint estate and effects. It provides easier to reach the estimate of 80,000 than to proceed to the next stage of liquidation involving an immediate four-way division of the assets, to many of which were in the form of land and buildings, merchant stocks, and overdue debts that could be converted into money neither quickly nor without loss. Certainly, for their part, Campbell and Brown did not wish to force realization. They had privately decided that their own partnership would continue for a further term of 10 years at least. They were delighted, therefore, when Robert Mitchell, before leaving Auckland for good in 1855, placed his share of 20,000 at the disposal of Brown and Campbell for 10 years on extremely generous terms. So there you go, whānau. Ka tahi anō hau kua pānui i tētahi wahanga o tēnei pukapuka. Te ingoa o te pukapuka ko The Father and His Gift, John Logan Campbell, later years. Te kaituhituhi ko R.C.J. Stone. Te rapia me pānui a hau i tētahi atu wahanga. Hei whakaoti i tēnei pānuitanga mā koutou. Hika. Ko tata ki te wā moe. Hey, I'm just going to go ahead and read it anyway. Interest was at the modest rate of 5% annually, and because the advance was secured against mortgages not to be registered, it was wholly private, not impeding the ability of the firm to borrow further on the same security elsewhere. Back in St Andrews, Gibson became difficult, suspecting, probably with good cause, that the estimate of 80,000 for the joint Properties arrived. It is free Auckland. Colleges was much too light. Only an immediate cash payment of his portion he now decided would satisfy him. He wrote to Browns expressing astonishment at the unbusinesslike way in which the settlement had been carried out in New Zealand. I should very much like to be informed, he continued angrily, as to when I may expect any further payments towards the liquidation of the Koi's debts, being now most anxious to have all settled up with a little delay as possible. For more than a year both partners wrote trying to mollify Gibson Brown with rather more success, for he in his prime had the greater tact in handling people, except political opponents. With them he was a very devil. Oh dearest me. Brown's letters adroitly blended appeals to Gibson's good nature and to his self-interest, even hinting at the wildly improbable danger that the canny Campbell, during this period of great commercial distress, will do some mad thing by realizing it, whatever sacrifice to comply with your wishes. Gibson finally relented, agreeing to leave the greater portion of his $20,000 inheritance as an advance to Brown and Campbell for a period of 3 to 5 years at an annual interest of 7.5%, even agreeing to continue should need arise to make secured advances in the years ahead. Campbell and Brown came out of the 1855 settlement very well. Their share of the subdivision of the Quadruple Alliance was not only the going concern of Brown and Campbell, a firm that was now Brown, boasted the very foremost, and deservedly so in the public estimation, but much fine real estate as well, which his Gibson Surmis had been considerably undervalued. They also held properties in addition to those which had been merged in the four-way partnership, a secret estimate which the two partners made for their private record later in 1855 of the value of all their joint personal and real estate was in excess of 100,000. Campbell, who had arrived in New Zealand but 15 years before with only $500, the gift of his father, now had, at the age of 37, a private fortune reckoned at 55,000. Over the next 18 months, Campbell prepared to leave Auckland. I was sick of it and glad to flee away, he wrote. His anxiety to quit the spot which, as he admitted, had been so kind a friend to me and made my fortune was no new thing. From the very first, one side of his nature had resented the years spent in pioneer Auckland. In the early 1840s, he was oppressed by a sense of isolation, distance from the centre of things, from a world of refinement only vaguely perceived because never known at first hand, even that an experience was soon to pass. Between 1848 and 1850, he left the colony to make what he called a grand tour, taking in parts of the Asia Minor and Europe. Europe in particular cast its spell upon him. His eyes were opened at last, his outlook transformed. Okay, so that's where it stops, folks. But I figured if I were to read out aloud to those of you who support, academic literature, the pursuit of higher education, particularly for, minorities, women, colour, wahine Maori, wahine o te moana nui ākiwa hoki, our Maori, Polynesian wahine, and of course, Indigenous women, but women of colour, minorities. This would supposedly give you some insight as to how difficult and contentious it can be sometimes to navigate in spaces that are still very white. and actually within the broader context of being a part of a mainstream university, where we don't really see our literature, either because it hasn't been published or it's not considered to be real kind of um, literature, if you like. Most of our tribal history it's still very oral. Either it hasn't been published or it's been kept away by the custodians um, or main kaitiaki of the hapu and iwi Maori, who are still very reluctant to share with non-Maori, um, you know, because of some stuff that went down between our ancestors and the crown, and some stuff that's still going on now. This would give you some insight, but actually this is a real good boost for me mentally, because it's going to help me from this point onwards actually push through and move forward, and I'm currently at the stage now in my research where I've got to do interviews. And I have to say, I thought the first stage was really scary, but this part is just wow. This is taking it to another level because I'm really by myself. And a lot of the expert kaikorero that I will be talking to, they're actually teaching me. So I feel like a pepe again. You know, I feel like I'm going back to being a baby again, and but that's kind of like a good thing because it's a bit of a reset, and it gives me this opportunity to actually question some blind spots, areas of improvement, but actually things that I don't know and have been maybe a little bit scared, a little bit withdrawn to talk about. Um, but I'm in the field amongst my own hapu, kaumatua, um, Pakeha, and it's really, we've been learning some waiata, waiata ngāhau, mōtiatia, karakia himene too, and it's very distinctive to my hapu, and so I'm really honoured, but I'm very humbled to be at the stage now where I feel like I'm a pepe again, like born again. But this is me coming into my own as a tangata tiriti. So this is me, folks, just signing off just for tonight. And I love you all. Pomare.